That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, my dudes, if you're watching this right now and it's the first day or two that it's uploaded, I am very sorry, but if you're over there on Patreon, you shoot me a DM. I'm going to be MIA for about 1 to 2 days. I'm actually recording this on the 21st right now, and that's because I am going and we are moving the studio to Tampa, Florida. So I understand that usually we get y'all those Patreon replies out within the hour, maybe 2 hours at the very latest. I don't think we've ever gone a day without checking the Patreon messages. But please just give me 1 to 2 days as I don't want to say a quick break because I'm going to be busier than I've ever been, but I'm just not going to have the time. Please understand that if you join right now, instead of me getting the podcast out of your Dynasty team, breaking it down and letting you know exactly what I think you should do, instead of that happening the same exact day, I'm going to have to wait until the 24th. And then that's when I can go through and I can start making those Patreon podcasts again. But yeah, beyond that, also on the 25th, we're going to be having a Patreon Dynasty League announcement. So make sure you're on the lookout. And let's dive into this video. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about some wide receivers that I think are currently overrated in Dynasty. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to be talking about someone that I think if you look at the profiles, if you look at the situations coming into this upcoming season, they make so much more sense to actually draft them at a cheaper price. So make sure you stick till the end of the video. Go down there, drop a like, leave a comment telling me why I am wrong with these wide receivers. If you have a good argument that goes against me, because I say all the time, I'm an idiot. I have the brain of a walnut. I mean, I am a very dumb person. So please, if you think that's the case, let me know why I'm dumb in the comment section. And let's dive into it. And Terry McLaurin, going to be one of the most overrated wide receivers, not only in redraft leagues, but also in Dynasty. Now, a big thing with Terry McLaurin is JN always says it best in the video premieres. He says it best in the live streams. What you're finding here is you're finding the bias that I think both Dynasty owners as well as redraft players are not necessarily looking at him as a regular wide receiver. They're viewing him and remembering the waiver wire darling that Terry McLaurin was coming out as a rookie, putting up production in an offense that was completely barren. I mean, there has been no talent in Washington for years now. Terry McLaurin has been maybe the only quality NFL player that you can even point to. So a lot of people, I mean, they have Terry McLaurin tattoos. They have probably Terry McLaurin tramp stamps based on what kind of hate I get in the video comment section every single time that I bring up something bad about Terry McLaurin. But if you hear me out, I think that we can actually make a very good argument in why you should be fading Terry McLaurin, why there are much better options in Dynasty Fantasy Football, and why he's a lot further down my Dynasty rankings on Patreon than you're going to find across really any Dynasty rankings. And before we get into anything, I just want to say, I was drafting him in so many leagues his rookie year coming into the NFL because you looked at the NFL draft capital. This was a wide receiver that was drafted with the 12th pick in the 3rd round. And that told us right away that this is someone that's going to get playing time. I mean, he's going to a team that really has no other talent. And what was so funny is in that 2019 draft class, because people love Kelvin Harmon going into the draft, Kelvin Harmon falls to day 3 in the NFL draft. Terry McLaurin went at the very top of the 3rd round, and Dynasty owners were still drafting Kelvin Harmon over Terry McLaurin. So we are picking him up at the very beginning of the 4th round, at the end of the 3rd round in Superflex leagues, and just laughing about it. Now, keep in mind, I don't want to act like we were a genius because I sold him going into his 2nd year. And of course, if we would have held out for a little bit longer, we would have had even more Dynasty value because he continued to impress in year 2. But if we take a step back and if we look at Terry McLaurin, a big thing that I want to focus in on is while, yes, he has been very impressive given the situation through 2 years. This is a wide receiver that wasn't a Juju Smith-Schuster, that wasn't a DJ Moore. He's not a CeeDee Lamb. He didn't come out of college after 3 years as a true junior and then get to the NFL, dominate right away, and then you look at the age-adjusted production, you go, holy crap, this is ridiculous. We need to be making sure that we put him on a path where he's eventually going to be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Terry McLaurin, on the other hand, came into the NFL as a very old player already. He stayed 5 years at Ohio State, came into the NFL at 23 years old. And this is significant, not because I'm saying Terry McLaurin's going to have a shorter NFL career. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying that if we are looking at his production, we need to be putting it in the context of a wide receiver that was 23 and 24 years old in the first 2 years of his NFL career. I mean, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown from that same draft class, they are unbelievable talents and that they were much more productive when they were only 21 and 22 years old in comparison. So Terry McLaurin, you would automatically expect him to put up a better rookie season, a better sophomore year. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he can continue to develop his game because he's already so much further down the road than those other players in the same draft class. And a big thing that I want to look at with Terry McLaurin at the same time is I think the production that we have seen in 2019 and 2020 is just completely misunderstood because people are looking at those 2 years. And because expectations for Terry McLaurin were so low and he came out and he crushed in a very bad team situation, I think people are just automatically assuming that Terry McLaurin has been an elite wide receiver in fantasy. And if you go through his rookie season, I mean, he averages 13.7 points per game. He was the wide receiver 30 in points per game. And as a rookie, you really like to see that. I mean, he was a mid wide receiver 3. That's a fantastic season. So of course you should be raising up his dynasty value. Now keep in mind, he's at 23 years old during this year. Not nearly as impressive as a Juju Smith-Schuster rookie season at 20, but still impressive nonetheless. And then in 2020, he comes out and takes this giant second step forward. But no, it's not that giant at all. I mean, you look at Terry McLaurin, and in 2020, he was the wide receiver 20 in points per game. So Terry McLaurin in 2020 was a low-end wide receiver 2 at 24 years old. That's something that I definitely want to make sure that we're pointing out. And I'm sorry, actually at 25 years old, I guess Terry McLaurin is even older than I thought. I mean, he put up that rookie season, I guess at 23, he put up that second year at 20. I don't know if I can do math. Terry McLaurin going to be 26 this year. So I guess his rookie season, he was 24 years old when he played it. I mean, maybe this just proves my point even more. But anyway, he was a low-end wide receiver 2 last year. And guys, I understand he was playing on a team that had a combination of Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins, some of the worst quarterback play in the entire NFL. And what we always say, if you're looking at wide receiver production, we say you can find a good wide receiver to be productive in fantasy on a very bad offense with a really bad quarterback. But the one thing you need to see is you need to see no other options on that passing offense, because as soon as you start throwing other guys on the passing offense that can get targets, all of a sudden that wide receiver, I mean, the piece of his pie that's already very small, I mean, it actually gets smaller. But Terry McLaurin was in a fantastic situation in that there was nobody, and I repeat, nobody else to throw the ball to this past year. I mean, if you pull up the depth chart, they had Antonio Gandy-Golden, they had Cam Sims, and they had an injured Kelvin Harmon. So they had nothing besides Terry McLaurin. This is why Logan Thomas, a first-year tight end, and J.D. McKissick were by far and away the target leaders over any other wide receiver not named Terry McLaurin this past season. And if you pull up where he's going in high-stakes redraft leagues right now, he's going as the wide receiver 11. And if you pull up where he's going in dynasty leagues, he's going even higher than this. He's going as a low-end wide receiver 1 in dynasty. And I think that is crazy. Now, I understand with Terry McLaurin, Ryan Fitzpatrick coming in is going to raise the overall productivity of this offense. Ryan Fitzpatrick historically has locked and loaded onto his alpha wide receiver. But at the same time, you are seeing a drastic change in this offense. So Kelvin Harmon from the same draft class, yes, he's a bum. Yes, he should have never been drafted that high in dynasty, is coming back. That's going to be another option to get snaps. But most importantly, you have Curtis Samuel getting signed to this team. You have Dyami Brown getting drafted in the 3rd round. So all of a sudden, Terry McLaurin, yes, playing on a better offense, but he's playing on an offense that's going to be completely slimming down the target share that he actually sees this upcoming season. So if the overall pie gets bigger and Terry McLaurin's slice gets a little smaller, I mean, I think Terry McLaurin's in line for a very similar year to what he's actually had in year 2. I think he's kind of in line to be a mid wide receiver 2 in fantasy. And if that's going to be his outlook, I really want nothing to do with Terry McLaurin, because what we really need to look at is the long-term situation in Washington. So Curtis Samuel has that guaranteed contract. He's going to be there. Dyami Brown's only going to get better. And what you really need to look at is the fact that they are not going to have any path to upgrade this quarterback situation. Because at quarterback, they have Ryan Fitzmagic, who I know a lot of people want to get behind because he's been a very exciting quarterback in fantasy, at least providing value for the other options on the offense. But in terms of what he actually does for an NFL team, he's not a good quarterback. I mean, there's clearly a case to be made of why, I mean, he is not able to stay with the team for longer than 2 seasons. Please don't try to tell me that Ryan Fitzmagic is an above average starting NFL quarterback. And on top of this, we know that he's already very old. I mean, Ryan Fitzmagic, I'd be surprised if he plays in the NFL for longer than 2 years. This is a player that should be on the decline. So this is a quarterback situation that's only going to get worse after this season, because Fitzmagic, most likely, I don't want to say going to be gone, but he's either going to be there and be worse, or they're going to have to find a different answer. And what's bad about this Washington situation is they should have one of the best defenses in the NFL. And what that does is that makes it where they're going to have no shot to get a Spencer Rattler or Sam Howell, one of those elite franchise quarterbacks at the top end of next year's draft class. So Washington kind of going to be stuck in the middle where they don't really have an answer at quarterback. And I really don't want to be targeting a wide receiver 2 on that team if I'm going to be having to pay a wide receiver 1 price tag. So now Courtland Sutton is going to be in a very similar mold this upcoming year, where Courtland Sutton, in my opinion, he's getting into a situation that is significantly worse than what we had last time we saw him. And also with Courtland Sutton, the former production that he has had was completely misunderstood. So if we pull up the Sutton profile right now, I mean, this is a player that's going to be 26 years old this upcoming season. And I understand. I mean, one of the reasons that people love Courtland Sutton is this man looks like an alpha wide receiver. I mean, if you just wanted to create an alpha wide receiver in terms of his size, you have Courtland Sutton standing at 6'3", 218 pounds. So, of course, you love to see that body, and you want him to do well in the NFL because players like this are very exciting. So whenever he does go out there and produce, people just automatically assume, at least this is what I'm thinking, they just assume that he's producing more than he actually is based on how flashy he is when he does it. Because obviously we don't get to see him in 2020 when he has a torn ACL. By the way, last offseason, I was saying that I was saying that Courtland Sutton was a way overrated asset, and we didn't end up getting to see how that panned out. I think that we were going to be right on it. So I think we have to keep on pushing that train, because with Courtland Sutton, his second year, yes, was impressive in the NFL. His second year, he came out and he was the wide receiver 28 in points per game. He had 13.9 points per game, and I really want to focus in on the situation that he was in 2019, because in 2019, Courtland Sutton was really the only option on this team. Now, they had rookie year Noah Fant, and keep in mind, with rookie tight ends, you don't expect them to produce anything. I mean, nothing at all. So they have rookie year Noah Fant, but beyond that, they have nothing. They move on from Emmanuel Sanders halfway through the year. Emmanuel Sanders was very ineffective in 2019. I mean, unless you count Tim Patrick as significant target competition, Courtland Sutton was the only wide receiver on this offense to throw to. And he finishes as the wide receiver 28. And this is not a Juju. This is not a DJ Moore. This isn't a CeeDee Lamb situation. He didn't come into the NFL at 20 years old. He came into the NFL at 22 years old. So you're expecting him to be a little bit more productive earlier on in his career. So in the case of Sutton, a wide receiver 3 with nobody taking targets away from him, then this team goes out there and they draft Jerry Jeudy in the first round. They follow it up with KJ Hamler in the second round. Both wide receiver prospects that were great prospects coming into the NFL. And what's really bad about this Sutton situation is they do not have an answer at quarterback. So all of a sudden, you're looking at Courtland Sutton as a wide receiver that his sophomore year, when he had no target competition at all, he was a wide receiver 3 in fantasy. Now they go out there, they add a wide receiver 1 in Jerry Jeudy. Now you can make the argument that Courtland Sutton's the wide receiver 1A, Jerry Judy's the wide receiver 1B, and I'd be fine with both of their value if that was it. But beyond that, Noah Fant is a fantastic tight end. Going into year 3, you're expecting Noah Fant to take another jump. You're expecting Jerry Jeudy to take a jump going into year 2. And with Courtland Sutton, people have not reacted to the target competition that he's going to have on this offense. Right now, he's being valued as a mid wide receiver 2 in Dynasty drafts. And we have never seen him put up that type of production. And his situation, when he was producing, was way worse than it is now. So please explain to me how Courtland Sutton is holding his value this high. Maybe you can make the argument that you're betting on the talent and he's a free agent this upcoming offseason and he can find greener pastures elsewhere. But I mean, I'm not willing to make that bet, because I think if you really believe in Courtland Sutton, you kind of fade him this upcoming season. And then next offseason, when he's about to go into free agency, that's when you go out there and buy the talent. But the situation this year is so bad. I mean, Tim Patrick is still there. Everybody that was getting targets last year is there. They all are progressing, because we know Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler were rookie year wide receivers, as well as you have Noah Fant was as a second year tight end. All those players are going to get better. And the quarterback situation is a combination of Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. How productive can this offense actually be with that quarterback combination? I'd be very surprised if, Courtland Sutton comes close to returning value on his ADP. So now let's go over to a wide receiver that I think is a significant value compared to these two players. let's go talk about DJ Chark. Because in the case of DJ Chark, I think people really are overlooking what actually happened in 2019. So with DJ Chark, unlike these other two options, I mean, he actually came into the NFL at exactly the age you wanted to see. He came into the NFL at 21 years old. He was a true junior coming out of LSU. So that is going to be notable in age adjusting his production earlier on in his NFL career, because he should be less polished. He should be continuing to develop as he gets into his age 23, 24, 25 season. And in 2019, his second year, where Courtland Sutton, keep in mind, this year, Courtland Sutton was a wide receiver 3 in fantasy. Here, DJ Chark was a wide receiver 2. DJ Chark was the wide receiver 19 in points per game. And if you go out there and if you take out the 2 injured weeks that he had at the end of the season, this actually shoots up for DJ Chark to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. So essentially, 2019, DJ Chark was a low-end wide receiver 1. He was playing in an offense with Gardner Minshew as his quarterback. He was a second-year wide receiver. And unlike these other 2 wide receivers, the case of DJ Chark, the situation has gotten so much better, yet his price has actually declined. So with Chark, I mean, he is going to be 25 this upcoming year. He's only 24 right now. And you're looking at him as an elite level athlete. I mean, coming out of college, he was 6'3" and ran a 4.34 40-yard dash. He was drafted in the second round pretty much just based off his athleticism and seeing if he could eventually turn into something, which he proved that he did in 2019. And the difference is Trevor Lawrence coming in is going to unlock this Jacksonville Jaguars offense. I mean, I believe that this team is going to go from being one of the worst teams in the NFL to at least an average team in the NFL. And if that's going to be the case, we have seen DJ Chark be a low-end wide receiver 1 his second year in the league. Now, I think that, of course, you have Laviska Shenault going to be taking targets away from him. But a big thing that I want to focus in on is the fact that a lot of people, for whatever reason, are acting like Marvin Jones being added to this offense does anything for DJ Chark. This has been a fantastic offseason for not only him upgrading his quarterback position, but also having more targets available to him. Because you go through and you look at the departures on this offense. I mean, this team loses Keelan Cole, who had 88 targets, Chris Conley, who had 63, Tyler Eifert, who had 60, James O'Shaughnessy, who had 38. All of those players are gone. Now, the only really add in Marvin Jones and Travis Etienne, but they lost 250 targets from this offense last year. So that pie that we just talked about, that's about to get a whole lot bigger with Trevor Lawrence coming in. Now, DJ Chark is going to be able to take a larger slice of that pie. So Chark, when you're getting him rounds behind Courtland Sutton and Terry McLaurin, I think he's a way better value. I understand that you can make the argument that either wide receiver is a more talented option than him, but I think he's in the best situation out of the 3. He's had a better season than either one of those 2 other wide receivers. So I'm not saying to draft DJ Chark over Courtland Sutton or Terry McLaurin. Now, I would say to draft DJ Chark over Courtland Sutton. I would definitely prefer having Chark over Sutton in Dynasty. But obviously, McLaurin's at the top of this list. But if you look at the difference in their price, it shouldn't be nearly as large as it is. I mean, if you could trade Terry McLaurin for DJ Chark in a first-round rookie pick, I'm doing that every single day of the week. Now, thank you, my dudes. I really hope you enjoyed this video. And of course, if you did, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment. And I'm sure you didn't enjoy the video, so tell me why I am wrong on either Courtland Sutton or Terry McLaurin. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all, and have a great day. We've gotten a ton of new members joining the flock. Thank you, Grind for Gold, Devin, Bungified, Brian, Brody, Victor, Chris, Grant, Trevor, and David. Thank you, my dudes.